جاري البث الحي من الطائرة بدون طيار.
تم التعرف على سرية الأعداء الموجود على هذا الموقع.
نحتاج ذخيرة الجنود.
ستنفذ الذخيرة منا. نحتاج المزيد. وحنا رجال صفقة جيدة. شكرا.
طائرة بدون طيار تعمل. بدأت البث.
وحدات الأعداء. أحضروا المسلم. أحضروا المسلم. سريع للأعداء. قناص من الأعداء. يوجد قناص في المنطقة. أين المسعف؟ أين المسعف؟ أدين لك بوحدة جيدة. شكرا.
عد الآن إلى القتال.
جنود الأعداء على الأرض.
طائرة بدون طيار تعمل. بدأت البث.
صارت قوات النار حول ستنفذ الذخيرة منا. نحتاج المزيد. حول. أحضروا المسعف. فقد أحد الرجال. فقد أحد الرجال. التجهيزات صارت في موقعك. فقد أحد الرجال. فقد أحد الرجال. أحضروا المسعف. جنود الأعداء. سريع للأعداء. جنود الأعداء على الأرض. سريع للأعداء. جنود الأعداء على الأرض.
جاري البث الحي من الطائرة بدون طيار.
الأولية إلى هنا.
أين المسعف؟ أحد الرجال.
فليبتعدوا وتعيشوا أيها الجندي.
فقد أحد الرجال. ستنفذ الذخيرة منا. نحتاج المزيد. حول. نفذت الذخيرة منه. نفذت الذخيرة منه. ستنفذ الذخيرة منه. نحتاج المزيد. حول. صارت قوات الأعداء. حول. تم الاستيلاء على إحدى النقاط. آسف جدا. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. تم مسح جميع المناطق. الموقع تم التعرف على الأعداء على الأرض. تم التعرف على سرية الأعداء. تسمعوني؟ وحدات الأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟
تحركات الأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟
نحتاج إلى مساعدة جيدة. حول. شكرا.
نفذ ركود الطائرة بدون طيار. انتهى البث.
يوجد قناص في المنطقة.
الطائرة بدون طيار تعمل. بدأت البث.
يوجد قناص في المنطقة. حول. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. تم التعرف على سرية الأعداء. تسمعوني؟
نفذ ركود الطائرة بدون طيار. انتهى البث. جاري البث الحي من الطائرة بدون طيار.
شكرا لك. فقدنا السيطرة على إحدى النقاط. فقد أحد الرجال. صفقة جيدة.
online and transmitted.
Medic! Hostiles on the ground. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy units on the move. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Medic! Medic! Hostiles on the ground.
Transmitted on this mark.
Medic! Sniper! Sniper, going on perimeter. I owe you one. You got it. Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Ammo!
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Ammo here! Get ammo here!
Enemy troops! Enemy forces. Requesting a medic. We need enemy units on the move. Enemy troops! Enemy units on the move. Hostiles on the ground. Enemy activity. Hostiles on the ground. Enemy medic. Sniper! Enemy units on the move. Hostiles on the ground. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Hostiles on the ground. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Hostiles on the ground.
Get first aid! Here!
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Frag grenade!
New commander is on duty. Enemy troops! Medic! Hostile sniper spotted. Over. Sniper!
UAV online and transmitted.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Sniper! Enemy forces. Over. Sniper! Enemy troops! Requesting a medic. Over. Requesting a medic. Over. Requesting a medic. Over. Requesting a medic. Enemy infantry spotted. Hostiles on the ground. Hostiles on the ground.
UAV online and transmitted.
Frag grenade! Grenade! Frag grenade!
Enemy troops! Hostile forces spotted. Over. Over. Enemy troops! Enemy units on the move. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy units on the move. Medic!
Frag grenade!
A bingo on ammo. Do you copy? Enemy troops!
UAV online and transmitted.
Get ammo here! Grenade! Frag grenade!
Good deal, thanks.
Frag grenade! Get ammo!
Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy troops!
Grenade! Grenade!
Medic!
Grenade! Ammo here! Grenade!
Hostiles on the ground.
UAV online.
Enemy troops! Position. Over.
Get ammo!
Enemy unit lies in your position.
Clear! All right!
UAV online
Thanks.
and transmitted.
I owe you one. Enemy forces. Over. position.
Online and transmitting.
Grenade! Grenade! Ammo! Grenade!
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces. Over.
UAV transmitting on this one.
Enemy units on the move. Enemy units on the move. Hostiles on the ground, sir. Enemy units on the move. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy
Clear! All right!
Online and
Thanks,
transmitting.
champ. Sniper! Hostile sniper spotted. Over. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry on the ground. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
UAV offline.
Enemy units on the move. Enemy troop. Hostiles on the ground.
UAV transmitting on this one.
We need reinforcing. Do you copy? Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Thanks, champ. We need ammo. Requesting ammunition. Over. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Over. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Over. Okay. Enemy forces. Over. Supplies at your position. Do you copy? We need support. Do you Control copy? Restored. We need reinforcing. Do you copy? Enemy forces spotted. Over. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Over. Enemy troop. Go! 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 Follow me! Enemy units on the move. Enemy infantry spotted. 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 Enemy units on the move. Enemy units on the move.
Ammo here! Ammo here!
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Grenade!
UAV transmitting on this one.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Supplies at your position. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
UAV online and transmitting.
Hey, thanks. Hey, thanks. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy activity. Do you Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Position cleared and under control. Sniper!
Grenade! Grenade!
Enemy forces spotted. spotted.
UAV transmitting on
Enemy forces spotted.
Sorry,
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy units on the
Enemy
move.
forces spotted.
Enemy activity. Copy. Enemy units on the move. Hostiles on the ground.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy forces spotted. Over. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Roger that.
Ammo.
Hostile forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Requesting reinforcement. Over. Requesting reinforcement. Over. Requesting reinforcement. Over. Supply reinforcement. Over. We need reinforcing. Do you copy? Enemy infantry.
Enemy units on the move.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy units on the
Snipers
move.
on our perimeter.
Enemy troops
Identified. Identified. Do you copy?
Hostiles on the ground. Enemy units on the move. Troops. Enemy sniper.
transmitting
Enemy units on the move.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostiles on the ground.
We need ammo. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostiles on the ground. Hostiles on the
Enemy
ground.
troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy forces. Over. Over.
Sniper. Sniper.
Enemy forces. Hostile forces. Hostile forces.
Sniper. Enemy activity. Running dry. Copy. Need ammo. Over.
UAV online and transmitting.
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Sniper.
Supplies at your position.
Enemy units on the move. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy activity.
Hostile sniper spotted. Over. Sniper. Hostile sniper spotted. Over and over. We need reinforcing. Do you copy?
Transmitting on this mark.
Enemy activity. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy activity. Do you copy? On the ground. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Good deal. Thanks.
Sniper.
Enemy forces spotted. Over. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces.
Do you copy? Enemy units on the move. Thanks, champ.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy units on the move. Enemy
Supplies.
forces. Over. I owe you one.
Medic.
Medic. Enemy
infantry.
Enemy activity. Do you
Enemy
copy?
forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Over. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces infantry spotted. Over. Medic. Hostile infantry spotted.
Enemy
Over.
activity. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. All clear. Position under control. Out.
First aid. Here.
No, sir. Enemy units on the
Supplies at your position.
Hostiles on the ground. Enemy activity. Enemy units on sniper.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry
Get ammo
spotted.
here.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy spotted.
Go! Go! Military reinforcements.
Enemy infantry spotted. 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 We've lost control of an outpost.
Enemy forces spotted. Over. Enemy troops.
No on view. Transmission ending.
No, sir. No way, man.
Roger that.
You got it.
Roger that.
Forces spotted.
Over.
Over. Enemy forces spotted. Over. Enemy units on the move, Chief. Enemy forces. Enemy forces spotted. Over.
All clear. Position under control. Out. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
Over.
Position cleared and under control.
Enemy units on the move.
Supplies
Got
is
it.
your
Enemy troops. Hostiles on the ground.
forces spotted. Over.
Enemy troops.
Get first aid! Get first aid!
Enemy activity. Do you copy? Thanks. I owe you one. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? 10-4. Enemy activity.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry.
Enemy units.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Over.
Throwing flag!
Enemy forces. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy units on the ground. Enemy units identified. Do you copy? Do you copy? Enemy troops. Enemy force. Over.
Transmitting on this mark.
Grenade!
Enemy forces spotted. All clear. Position under control.
Over. Good deal. Thanks.
We've lost control of an outpost.
Frag grenade!
UAV offline.
Enemy forces.
Thanks. Enemy activity. I owe you one.
UAV online and transmitting.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy units on the move.
Supplies at your position.
Enemy activity.
Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted.
UAV online and
Damn it. Sorry.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Do you copy? Forces. Over.
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper
Enemy
spotted.
units on the move.
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper.
Enemy forces. Over. Hostile sniper spotted.
Enemy
Over.
infantry spotted.
Enemy units on the move.
Enemy infantry
Hostile forces
spotted.
Over. Okay.
Enemy forces.
Enemy
Enemy
units
forces
on the move.
spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy units. Sorry. Hostile
Enemy
forces
troops
identified.
over.
Do you copy?
UAV transmitting
Hostile
on
forces
this
spotted.
mark.
Over.
Enemy infantry spotted. Sniper spotted.
Damn it. Sorry. Hostile forces.
Supplies at your position.
Enemy
Hostile forces. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces.
Enemy units.
Enemy sniper
Do you
spotted.
copy?
Hostile forces. Enemy sniper
units on the
spotted.
move.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troops. Enemy activity. Do you copy?
UAV online
spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces over. Enemy infantry spotted.
فليبتعد الجميع.
Enemy units on the move.
Medic, enemy infantry spotted.
Hey, thanks. Good deal, thanks. Sorry, enemy units.
All clear. Position under control. Out. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostiles on the ground. Hostiles on the ground. Enemy troops. Enemy troops identified. Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy units on the move.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy forces over. Enemy forces over. Good deal, thanks.
We're taking casualties, over.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Outpost is being overrun.
Enemy forces over. Good deal, thanks.
The enemy. ذلك غير ممكن. اتبعني. سريع للأعداء. جنود الأعداء على الأرض. جنود الأعداء على الأرض.
نحتاج ذخيرة.
جنود الأعداء على الأرض. تحركات الأعداء تتحرك. القائد الجديد في الخدمة. سريع للأعداء. ظهر قائد للأعداء. لا سيدي. ظهر قائد
شارك
للأعداء.
بس
لا
الحي من
سيدي.
الطائرة بدون خيار.
جنود الأعداء على الأرض. ظهر جنود الأعداء.
نحتاج إسعافات أولية.
ظهر جنود الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء. شوهد قناص من الأعداء. جنود الأعداء على الأرض. شكرا لك.
أحضر مزيدا.
جنود الأعداء. تحركات الأعداء. جنود الأعداء على الأرض. تحركات الأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟ سريع للأعداء. اعتذر. سريع للأعداء. صارت في موقعك. جنود الأعداء من الأعداء.
نحتاج إلى مسعف. حول.
الطائرة بدون خيار تعمل. بدأت
تحركات الأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟ جنود الأعداء على الأرض. سريع للأعداء. تحركات الأعداء على الأرض.
فقد أحد
فقد
الرجال.
أحد الرجال. أحضروا المسعف. أحضروا المسعف. تحركات الأعداء على الأرض. فقد أحد الرجال. أحضروا المسعف. فقد أحد الرجال. فقد أحد الرجال.
حول.
الطائرة بدون خيار تعمل. بدأت البث.
أحضروا المسعف.
الطائرة بدون سيار.
أحتاج إلى مسعف هنا. إلى المسعف. أحضروا المسعف. أحضروا المسعف. فقد أحد الرجال. أحضروا المسعف. فقد أحد الرجال. يوجد قناص مضمض يحتاج إلى تعزيزات. هل تسمعوني؟ أين المسعف؟ تعزيزات. حول. لما تتعرفوا على يد الأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟ فقد أحد الرجال. فقد أحد الرجال. تمييز الأعداء. أين المسعف؟
الطائرة بدون سيار تعمل وبدأت البث.
شكرا لك. تجهيزات وسلامة في موقعك. على سبيل المسعف. تحولي. تمييز الأعداء. وحدات الأعداء. أحضروا المسعف الرجال. أين المسعف؟ فقد أحد الرجال. فقد أحد الرجال. تم الاستيلاء على إحدى النقاط. قوات الأعداء. حول. ضرب قوات الأعداء. حول. أحد الرجال. لما تعرفوا على سرية الأعداء.
بدأت البث.
تسمعوني؟ فقد أحد الرجال. أحضروا المسعف. فقد أحد الرجال. قوات أعداء. حول.
جاري البث الحي من الطائرة بدون سيار.
لما تعرفوا على ظهر جنود الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء. فقد أحد الرجال. نحتاج إلى مسعف. أحضروا المسعف. أحضروا المسعف. فقد أحد الرجال. لما تعرفوا على الأعداء. تسمعوني؟ وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. صفقة جيدة. ضرب قوات الأعداء. حول. يوجد قناص في المنطقة. فقد قناص. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. قوات الأعداء. حول. إلى المسعف. انطلق إلى موقعك. حول. ضرب قوات الأعداء. حول. تسمعوني؟ تم التعرف على الأعداء. تسمعوني؟ جنود الأعداء على الأرض. قوات أعداء. قوات أعداء. حول. أعداء. حول. قوات الأعداء. حول. أين المسعف؟ أحد الرجال. جنود الأعداء صارت في موقعك. أين المسعف؟ فقد أحد الرجال. قوات أعداء. حول. سريع للأعداء. قوات أعداء. حول. فقد أحد الرجال. فقد أحد الرجال. جنود الأعداء على الأرض. فقد أحد الرجال. سريع للأعداء.
الطائرة بدون سيار تعمل وبدأت البث.
أين المسعف؟ للأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟ قوات أعداء. حول. أحضروا المسعف. أين المسعف؟ شكرا أيها البطل. فقد أحد الرجال. فقد أحد الرجال. تعرفوا على سرية الأعداء. هل تسمعوا لي؟
جاري البث
تعرفوا على سرية الأعداء. تسمعوا لي؟ ظهر جنود الأعداء. التجهيزات صارت في موقعك. أحضر أحد الرجال. فقد أحد الأعداء تتحرك. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك.
شكرا أيها البطل.
نحتاج إلى الأعداء على الأرض.
جاري البث الحي من الطائرة بدون سيارة.
هل تسمعوني؟ شوهد قناص من الأعداء. شوهد قناص من الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء. شوهدت قوات الأعداء. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. أحضر أحد الأعداء. We're losing this battle. Start fighting or I'll find someone who can. Move it! New commander reporting for duty.
UAV transmitting on
Control restored. Well done.
Enemy units on the move.
Position cleared and under control.
Enemy units on the move.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity. You copy.
Hostile forces. Over. Enemy infantry spotted. 10-4. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Thanks. I owe you one.
Medic.
Enemy forces spotted. Over. Enemy activity.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry
Enemy
spotted.
units on the move. Enemy on the move.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. supplies at your position. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Over. Enemy
forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry 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 spotted.
Frag out.
UAV online.
Enemy forces, over.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Medic!
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry 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 spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troop!
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy forces,
Enemy
over.
infantry spotted.
Medic!
Outpost is being overrun. Vision cleared and under control.
Medic!
Enemy unit on the move. Enemy active, copy. Do you copy? Enemy force, over.
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Hostiles on the ground. Hostile sniper spotted, over.
Thanks. Much appreciated.
Enemy troops identified, over. Enemy units on the move. Do you copy?
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy activity. Do you copy? Thanks. I owe you one. Enemy sniper forces, over.
Medic!
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy forces, over. Medic!
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Medic!
ألقيت قنبلة.
Medic!
Enemy forces spotted. We've lost control
Enemy
of an
forces,
outpost.
over. Hostile enemy forces, over.
First aid! Here!
UAV
First aid!
transmitting
Here!
on this
Vision
mark.
cleared and under
Here.
control.
Enemy units on the move.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy troops identified.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Do you copy? Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper.
Medic!
Enemy
units,
forces
hostile
spotted.
forces spotted. Over. Enemy activity. Enemy forces. Hostile forces spotted. Over.
UAV online and transmitting.
Sniper!
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry
Hostile forces
spotted.
spotted. Over.
Activity. Enemy units. Frag grenade.
Hostile sniper spotted. Over. Enemy troop. Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy
Enemy forces. Hostile
spotted. Over. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
On this mark.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy activity. Enemy unit.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Medic! Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy troops identified. Spotted. Over. Medic!
Ammo, here!
Enemy forces. Over. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy forces. Over. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy forces. Hostile forces spotted. Over.
UAV online and transmitting.
Medic! Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Medic! 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 Enemy forces spotted. 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 Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Supplies at your position. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Medic! Medic!
Enemy unit.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
UAV online and transmitting.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Snipers are on perimeter. Enemy
troop.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Medic!
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
UAV offline.
Enemy troops identified. Do you hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy troops identified. Do you enemy forces spotted. Over. Hostile forces enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Over. Enemy forces. Enemy forces. Over. Supplies. Enemy forces. Hostile forces. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy infantry. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces over. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Medic.
Enemy activity. You copy.
Great, thanks.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy forces. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy water vehicle spotted. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
UAV is
Supplies at your position. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Medic.
UAV transmitting.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Spotted. Enemy troop. Medic.
UAV offline.
cleared and under control. Supplies at your position.
Enemy units on the move. Sniper!
UAV transmitting.
We've lost control of an outpost. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy units on the move. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy units on the move.
Enemy infantry spotted.
UAV is being low on fuel. Transmission ending. UAV online and transmitting.
Hostile forces spotted. Over.
Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Let's move.
Enemy units on the move. Medic! Hostile infantry
Spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile forces spotted. Hostile forces spotted. Enemy troops identified. Over. Copy. Medic.
Online and transmitting.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Medic.
Enemy infantry spotted.
I need a medic here! Follow me! Medic, quick. Do you copy? Thanks. I owe you one. Hey, hostiles on the ground. Medic! Medic!
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Medic!
Enemy infantry spotted. Infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Medic! Medic! Good deal, thanks. Okay. Medic! Medic!
نحتاج اسعافات اوليه هنا.
Online and transmitting.
Hostile forces spotted. Over.
Supplies at your position.
Enemy forces. Over. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Medic. Enemy units on the move. Hostile forces
We've lost
spotted.
control of an outpost.
Medic. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Medic! Medic! Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Medic! Medic!
Clear. All right.
Hey, thanks.
Supplies at your position.
online and transmitting.
Enemy forces, over. Medic. Hostile infantry spotted, over. Thanks. I owe you one. Hostile forces spotted, over.
Grenade! Throwing smoke.
Hostile forces spotted, over. Enemy activity, do you copy?
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy forces spotted, over.
Grenade!
Requesting ammunition, over. Medic! Enemy unit, medic! Thanks. I owe you one. Requesting ammunition, over. Enemy troops, medic! Over. Medic! Hostiles on the ground.
All right.
Enemy units on the move. Enemy forces, medic! Supplies at your position.
UAV online and transmitting.
Medic! Medic!
Clear. All right. Good to go. Clear.
Enemy forces, over. Enemy forces, medic!
Here.
Hostile forces, enemy forces, over. Hey, thanks. Stop yakking and get off this net. Enemy units on the move. Enemy units on the move. Sniper! Medic. Enemy units on the move. Enemy units on the move. Hostile spotted. Over. Enemy troops. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Medic. Enemy activity. Medic. Do you copy? Hostiles on the ground. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy units on the move.
Online and transmitting.
Medic! Supplies at your position. Enemy activity. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Over. Sniper! Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Sniper!
Hold on. All right. Good to go.
Sniper!
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Medic! Enemy forces. Over.
نحتاج إسعافات أولية هنا.
Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Over. Sorry, Chief. Enemy unit on the move. Hostile enemy troops identified. Over. Copy. Medic!
UAV transmitting on this mark.
I'm bingo on ammo. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted.
Supplies at your position. Enemy activity. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. We lost control of an outpost. Running dry. Need ammo. Over. Good Out.
Thanks, champ.
We've lost control of an outpost.
Clear.
Hostile forces. Enemy troops in fortress. Over. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Get ammo here.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Hostile enemy units on the move.
Let's move. Supplies at your position. Enemy infantry. Infantry spotted.
Enemy troop.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy
forces.
Hostile
Enemy
forces
forces
spotted.
spotted.
Hostile forces spotted.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Ammo right here.
Position cleared and under control. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troop.
UAV transmitting on this
Enemy
mark.
forces. Over.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy forces. Over.
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy
units on
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
Hey, thanks.
All
UAV
clear.
transmitting on
Position
this
under
mark.
control. Out. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy forces. Over.
Enemy infantry
Forces.
spotted.
Over.
Supplies at your
Enemy troop. Do you copy? Hostiles on the ground.
Enemy infantry
Enemy
spotted.
troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy
Hostile snipers on the ground.
Enemy forces spotted.
Snipers on our perimeter.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile sniper spotted. Over. Hostiles on the ground.
UAV online and transmitting.
Enemy infantry
units
spotted.
on the move.
Enemy forces spotted.
Get ammo here. Ammo.
Position cleared and under control. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
Medic. Enemy hostile infantry spotted. Over. A bingo on ammo. Do you enemy medic. Hostile infantry
Enemy
spotted. Over.
infantry spotted.
Enemy troops.
Enemy
troops identified. Hostile forces spotted. Over.
Get ammo.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy activity. Do you
Supplies
copy?
at your position.
Medic.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy activity. Do you
Enemy
copy?
forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy units on the move. Enemy activity. Do you copy?
UAV online.
Enemy forces. Over. Medic.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy
Enemy sniper spotted.
Hostile
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy activity. Do you got it? Hostiles on the ground.
Supplies at your position. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostiles on the
Enemy
ground.
activity. Do you copy? Ammo, here!
Running dry. Need ammo.
Grenade!
Over. Running dry. Need ammo. Enemy units on the move. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy forces spotted. Over. Hostile sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy troops. Bingo on ammo. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted.
Running dry.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces. Enemy forces spotted.
Hostile forces. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy forces. Over.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy units on the move.
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy forces. Over.
Enemy
Enemy units on the move. Do you copy? Enemy forces. Over. You got it. You got it. Medic.
We've lost control of an outpost. Enemy infantry
troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy units on the move.
Enemy infantry.
Sorry, man.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy medic. Hostile infantry spotted.
Enemy
Over.
infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostiles on the ground.
Hey, thanks.
Enemy activity. Do you copy? Requesting a medic. Over.
We've lost control of an outpost.
Enemy activity. Do you
All
copy?
clear. Position under control.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy units on the move. Hostiles on the ground. Thanks. I owe you one. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy forces. Over. How about some help over here? Need support. Do you copy? Hostile forces spotted.
Enemy
Over.
infantry spotted.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Hostiles on the ground. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Hostile enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy troops. Enemy forces. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Hostile enemy troops identified. Enemy troops. Enemy forces. Medic. Over. Medic. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Hostile infantry spotted. Enemy units on the move. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy forces.
We've lost control of an outpost.
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy units on the move.
فليبتعد
Hostile
الجميع.
infantry spotted. Over. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy units on the move.
infantry
Enemy
spotted.
troops identified.
Enemy
Hostile
infantry
forces spotted. Over. Snipers on our perimeter. Medic. Medic.
ستعيش شكرا.
Good deal. Running dry. Need ammo. Enemy troops.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Cleared and under control. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy units on the move. Medic.
Supplies at your position.
UAV online and ready.
Medic. 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 Enemy troops.
UAV is being low on fuel.
Thanks.
Transmission ending.
I owe you one. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Forces spotted. Over. Medic.
UAV online.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Hostiles on the ground. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Go! Medic.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troops. Enemy forces identified. Do you copy? Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy units on the hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy forces spotted. Over. Hostile forces. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy troops on the ground. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy hostile infantry spotted. Over. Over. Enemy units on the move. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Over.
UAV is being low on fuel. Transmission ending.
Enemy forces. Over.
Outpost is being overrun.
Enemy troops. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy troops on the ground. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? I owe you one. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Hostile enemy forces. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Over. Medic. 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 Medic.
Enemy troops are...
We've lost control of an outpost.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy infantry.
Enemy forces.
Enemy infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy infantry.
Enemy forces. Over.
All clear.
Medic. Medic. Running dry. Need ammo. Enemy troops. Forces. Over. Over. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Over. Enemy troops. We need reinforcing. Do you copy? Hostiles on the ground. Medic! Hostiles on the ground.
Medic.
Frag grenade. Grenade.
Hostile forces spotted. Over.
We've lost control of an outpost.
Enemy units on the move. Enemy activity. Enemy units on the move. Medic.
Requesting ammunition. Over.
Hostiles on the ground. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy units on the move. Over. Medic, got it. Enemy troops. Hostiles on the ground.
Transmitting on this mark.
Medic! 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 Medic!
عد الآن إلى القتال.
Enemy activity. Do you
We're
copy?
taking casualties. Over. spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy.
Medic.
Enemy forces spotted. Outpost is being overrun.
Okay, go! Okay, enemy units on the move. Enemy units on the move.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Online.
Medic. Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
All clear.
UAV
Position under
transmitting
control.
on this
Out.
mark.
Damn it, sorry. أحضروا المسعف.
Supplies at your position.
Hostile forces.
Sniper.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Thanks.
All
I owe
clear.
you one.
Position under control.
Out. Damn it, sorry. We need ammo. Medic. Thanks. Hostile forces. Over. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy activity. Do you copy?
First aid. Here.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Frag grenade. First aid.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy forces. Over. Thanks. I owe you one.
We've lost control of an outpost.
Hostile forces spotted. Medic. Thanks, Jim. Medic.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy forces. Over. Enemy forces. Over. Medic. Sniper. Medic. Move it. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy troops identified. I need a medic here. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Medic.
We're running low on reinforcements.
UAV online and transmitting.
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry.
Enemy troops identified. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Medic. Enemy hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Supplies.
Medic.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Hostile medic.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy troops. Medic. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy forces. Over.
Enemy units on. Ammo. Frag grenade. Ammo. Grenade. Enemy units on the move.
Medic.
Grenade.
Medic. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Medic.
Here.
Online and
First
transmitting.
aid. Here.
Enemy unit on the move. Do you copy? Medic.
Supplies at your position.
Medic.
Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted.
Grenade.
Enemy units on the move.
Get first aid. Here. First aid.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Medic! Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?